We're a unique podcast for families of faith, produced by parents and pastors who understand and appreciate how hard it is to maintain your faith in a hostile culture. We're here to encourage and support you in the most vital role of all, parenting. If you're feeling overwhelmed and afraid, it's okay. You're not alone. Brilliantly Brave is hosted by two honest and engaging dads with 9 kids between them. A road tripper, author, and pastor, Father Brad Matthias, and iShine founder, solo parenting expert, and all-around foodie, Mr. Robert Beeson. Join us each week as we explore and engage with some of the most intriguing, inspiring, outrageous, and awesome parents in the world. This is Brilliantly Brave.
Hi, and welcome to Brilliantly Brave Parenting. I am your co-host, Pastor Brad Matthias, and I'm here with my colleague and sidekick.
You don't have to apologize. You can say sidekick. It's not a big deal. I just give you a hard time because I know you're insecure about it.
Well,
I like poking on
since we're now on video and people can see us, if they choose to go to YouTube and watch this, they saw me flinch right as I said sidekick. I kind of almost like I lobbed a grenade and ducked underneath the table. Did you see that?
Yeah, it was carefully rehearsed, and it's not. We spent way too much time talking about the sidekick thing.
Well,
right?
I think it's important because, as parents, people often feel like maybe
diminished?
Sometimes. Well, I think some parents feel if they're having a really bad day, they come into the house and they feel like they're the only one doing something. Have you ever had that feeling as a parent?
No, I feel that here. Like I'm,
Got it.
At home I
so
feel
like that
fair.
feeling like at the end of the day when you get to the kitchen and you see the pile of dishes and you're like, wait, how could that all be here just for me? Like I wasn't even here today. How's that my responsibility? Have you ever had that experience as a parent?
We have 6 kids, so we don't have those dishes. But I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Robert, what I'm saying is that sometimes I feel that way when I come to work. That's all. That's
Okay, Brad.
nothing special.
And this is valuable time that we're taking up of people listening to this, and we've now lost 2 minutes of their time.
Driving in their car. They're getting sorted. They got their coffee just right. They've cleaned up the little spill they got from the McDonald's drive-thru. They're good. They're ready to go now, and it's time to introduce our next guest.
Okay, our only guest. Let's do that, Brad. Why don't you go
Our
for it?
only and next guest for Season 2 of Brilliantly Brave Parenting, and I know that you're going to be thrilled to hear from this guest. She is a bigwig. She's in charge of a lot of important things in Colorado. Her name is Christi Lynn, and she is the Director of Kids and Culture Marketing at Focus on the Family.
That's right.
Hello, you guys.
Hey, welcome.
Wait, I feel like I need like a white hat or something. I don't know. I'm
A white hat?
Or one of those British
referee?
The little powder puffs on their heads.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's important. They
Yeah.
wear
Like
those.
George Washington? I don't know.
Royalty? Yeah, okay. I get it. We're thrilled to have you, Christi. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm not really a bigwig, but I love what I do here. Focus on the family and love spending time with you guys.
Well, Focus on the Family has been so instrumental for so many years, and I know we'll talk about that in just a second. We were talking a little bit off air about how, for Brad and I, Focus on the Family has been a big part of our life. Maybe as a kid, not a part that we'd want to remember in the Dare to Be Disciplined,
I got spanked.
but important because I think it really helped mold who we were. So it's been a real anchor for families in America for so long. And the things that you guys are doing now it's just really exciting to watch and really
I remember getting the book Preparing for Adolescence on my bed. My dad left me that book on my bed when I was getting into my teenage years. It was a lime green color. I still remember it to this date, and I started reading that, and that was my first entrance into what Focus on the Family was back in those days. And it's been amazing. Focus on the Family celebrating 40 years this year of helping families thrive, and doing that by preparing and strengthening and saving marriages, helping parents along their parenting journey, and also just standing up for those that can't stand for themselves, for kids that don't have a voice. The unborn, the preborn is what we like to call them, and the preborn, and for kiddos that want a forever home and desire a forever home, and then also helping kids that need to know and grow in Jesus. That's what we're all about. We are helping families that are in crisis that need to talk, and with our help center area being able to do that. So Focus has done an amazing amount of work in the past 40 years, and with God's help, we'll continue to do that. Absolutely.
Well, we couldn't be more excited, and I'm personally thrilled that you guys are getting into helping solo parents out there in the near future. I'm proud to be a Focus on the Family author. My book's coming out in January, and so we just, on so many levels, we're so happy to have you on the show. And I know that not only what Focus does, but you've been there for, 14 years? Is that what I read earlier?
2.5 years. Yeah, we moved. Yeah. My family moved out here back in 2000, and then left for a little while because of Christian music. Love it, so couldn't leave it, and then got back to Focus on the Family. So love the journey, and love to see what God has done literally all over the world.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. Christi, I can't help but think I'm 47. I was raised by good, godly Christian parents who believed in spanking, and they loved Dobson and read everything he published, and I paid the price. But at the end of the day, there was a stability to that, right? There was this consistency that Focus on the Family was a place that parents who were struggling with something, they knew they could go to.
Right.
It was a resource. It was a support. It was lighthouse in a dark world, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm really encouraged to hear, not only are you celebrating your 40th year as an organization, but also the fact that some of these brands that you developed, even in my age, I remember, like Adventures in Odyssey.
Yeah. Adventures in Odyssey is celebrating its 30th year this year. It's kind of crazy. And it's amazing to hear all the stories. We're hearing stories of parents who grew up on Adventures in Odyssey, and then now their kids are growing up on Adventures in Odyssey. We just had Benjamin Watson here, who is an NFL player, and he's going to be on the broadcast again in October. And he was talking about how he grew up on Adventures in Odyssey, and how his kids love Adventures in Odyssey, and he uses it with their kids now. And so we hear all sorts of those things. And of course, Adventures in Odyssey is just fun. It's fun to listen to, but the impact is so very deep.
What do you think, having looked back, and I'm sure you guys have had many conversations as an organization, what do you think it is about Adventures in Odyssey that has been such a mainstay? That what is it that keeps kids and families engaged in what you're doing with Adventures?
Well, part of it is we have a fabulous group of writers who have written an amazing amount of stories, and through those stories, they're talking about relationship, and ultimately pointing back to Jesus, pointing back to God and God's ways. And I think that's something to admire. I mean, kids love to listen, and they'll hear Whit, and he's that calm and gentle voice that's a mentor and a coach. We've heard from some kids that have written into us, and they've said, and even adults, that they've said, you know what, I never had a father figure as a child, or my father figure, my relationship with my dad wasn't great, and so Whit became that mentor to me. And so I think when we hear those sorts of things, that's the impact. You become part of the family. Whit becomes a friend, Connie becomes a friend, Wooten becomes a friend, and you get engaged in what they're doing. And then hopefully through the writing, through the storytelling, we can teach kids important lessons about character and about faith and about God's values and God's ways, but do it in a fun way. Do it in a fun way that's built with creativity of the art of storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, story is so significantly important to any kind of relationship. It's woven into all of our lives, obviously, but I have found that, working with our audience at iShine, stories are the way that it opens up dialogue where you can actually impart some wisdom without being too declarative and, preachy. And And I think that's what's great about Focus on the Family. I've always loved the idea of Focus approaches things not from obviously a biblical standpoint, but also understanding the holistic, psychology of how people are made up. I mean, James Dobson's background was in that, and so this is trying to figure out a way into kids' lives and into the family's heart, which I think you guys have done a tremendous job at over the years, and it's testament to it. And what are you guys doing for Adventures in Odyssey? I know that this is coming up on a landmark year for you, and there's a lot of activities. And without turning into a big commercial, I think it's important to recognize. Well, no, I mean, we want to hear about it.
Yeah, definitely. For Adventures in Odyssey, I'll first say we've had tons of kids that have, we've heard from lots of parents about how Odyssey has affected their lives. One story I will tell you about how, it's not preachy or teachy is that I had a parent come up to me in a homeschool conference recently, and she said, he loves Odyssey, but one night he came to my bedroom after listening crying, and I thought, wow, this isn't going to be good. And she went on to say how Adventures in Odyssey had the little boy came up to her and said, "Mom, I didn't tell the truth in this situation." And he went on to explain the situation where he lied. And the mom said, "Well, what made you come and say something?" And she said, "Wit from Adventures in Odyssey." And so it's those sorts of things, or the fact that, we did an album a couple of years back where we were really trying to teach the value of family and God's ways and how the family is God's design. And Whit was using the illustration of a fountain pen to say that you could take a fountain pen and you could turn it into a nail if you wanted to, and you could use that nail to hang a picture, but that fountain pen was designed to be a fountain pen. And those of things help to teach kids the values of how God has made us, how God has wired us, and how God desires us to be all that He's planned for us to be. As far as Adventures in Odyssey goes, we've been doing all sorts of things. Of course, we wrapped up this past summer, the Get in the Show contest, which allowed for a kiddo to be able to go on the cruise in November and perform with the Adventures in Odyssey actors, and that was loads of fun. And through that contest, not only was it fun, but we were also teaching kids about the fact that they have a part to play in God's larger story. And God, again, has made them unique and wonderful, and He has a special plan and a purpose for their lives. And so that was done, and then we're going to be doing some live events coming up in 2018, and we have the brand new Adventures in Odyssey Bible that we just released, which we're thrilled about because it's the first time in a long, long time that we've had the Adventures in Odyssey Bible, and totally redone, and colorful maps and all sorts of stuff, because ultimately at the end of the day we want kids to learn, to know, and grow in Jesus. And we believe that just like a house, if a kiddo can have a strong foundation and build that strong foundation at a very young age, then they're going to be able to stand the storms of life. And we know from research, and you guys know this, that from research, a kid's moral fiber, it's built by the age of 14, and all those character attributes are really kind of deep into their core by that time. So we just want to be there and make that foundation for them strong, and also be there for the moms and the dads. It's hard parenting these days. It's hard to know what to do. I'm a parent of two kids. My kids are a little bit older now, but I remember them growing up, and it just seems like it gets harder and harder with time. My daughter just graduated high school. She's starting college and in college this fall. And I remember, in middle school, it's different for her. My son started at the same middle school 6 years later this past fall, and he experienced things I never would have dreamed that he would have experienced in sixth grade. Just kids are talking about what they're what they're doing, kids that are just kind of confused with identity issues and who they are and whose they are. And I just never thought that my son would have to kind of go experience some of that, but he's experiencing that. And so as a parent, I end up having to experience that and knowing how to handle those sorts of things. So we want to be there as a tool and as a resource for parents to help them, whether it's, getting a resource and utilizing it, or calling our 800 line and talking to our counseling department. We get loads of calls every single month, and then our staff is able to call. Our staff is able to pray for them on Fridays. We consider that an honor to pray for our constituents. And some of these folks, it's marriages breaking apart, it's with children, it's parents that are just dealing with issues, whether it be discipline, which sometimes are easy potty training issues, or it's really hard stuff of my kids are on drugs, my daughter's cutting, how do I handle this sort of thing? And so we count it an honor. Family is not perfect. It's not pristine, and life is messy, and it just gets messier and messier as we live in a fallen world, and the world is more and more fallen every single day. And so we've got to have that hope and that help in order to overcome and in order to do what's best for our family.
Yeah, I think, as I'm listening to you talk, it just reminds me, Robert, our kids are high school, college, and older, and just the reality that parents, preteens, are really, they're kind of stuck with Disney or Nickelodeon. If you look at the secular options they have out there. I mean, and we've talked about this before. It's, it's not that they are overtly bad programming out there, but all they know is sarcasm. Like the entire skit is a sarcastic skit, and it's just sort of negative, and is definitely not a positive for a family of faith. And then to sort of say, hey, there are options available for these families today that are great options. These aren't boring, halfway produced kind of lame Christian content, Right. This is really top of the line stuff. And as I researched a little bit for this interview, I was looking at just the Adventures in the Odyssey Club, and I mean the artwork on that, and the depth and the breadth of what's available for a parent right now, the affordability, all of that, just it jives. And if you've got kids and they're under the age of 12, 13?
Yeah. About 8 to 12 is typically what we try and target. Yeah. Yeah. The whole reason we wanted to go and do the club, for instance, we started that back in 2014. And I tell you, we started it with duct tape and chicken wire. I mean, we did the very best we could with what we had at that time. And we wanted to start being in that space because we found through research that kids are spending more and more time online. Research will tell us that kids are spending up to 6 hours a day with some type of electronic device, some type of on-off switch. Yep. And I've seen that even in my own life with my kids, and definitely with my kids that I teach at church. The more and more I'm seeing these preteens come in to church with their own cell phones. Yep. And of course, those are personal decisions that families have to make, but we wanted to be there for them, and we also wanted them to see beyond themselves. Sometimes we are so caught up in this world, especially with digital and online and social media, where we're online in our own digital world. We don't really think beyond ourselves sometimes. And so we wanted to be able to give kids a vision for what it's like to put your faith in action in different ways, and what it's like to put discipleship into action. And so when we created the club, that was the mindset. We wanted to definitely be where kids were, but we also wanted to go beyond that. So every single month, we are trying to teach kids something specific, whether it's a character trait or if we're trying to teach them about someone who's doing something extraordinary. One of the first stories that we covered was a woman, is Dr. Val, and she brought peace to 2 warring tribes in Uganda. And she was a veterinarian. You know, she was a veterinarian. She was just taking care of these tribes' cows and just making sure that their cows were okay. But in the process of that, brought peace to them. She realized that they were fighting, that they were wanting to kill each other's cows and wanting to kill each other, basically. And she brought peace to them and brought them to ultimately know Christ, many of them. And so when we told her story, a lot of kids wrote in and they're like, wow, I could be a veterinarian and share Jesus with other people. And it's just opening up that mindset that sometimes people put folks in different categories. They say, well, if you're a pastor, then obviously you're going to tell people about Jesus. But if I'm a garbage man, how does that work for me? Or if I'm a teacher, how does that work for me? And so I think giving kids that sort of vision and that sort of insight that you can do all sorts of things. God has wired each of us with all sorts of talents and abilities. And if we lean on Him, He's going to show us what to do. I would never in a million years have dreamed of working at Focus on the Family in what I do now. When I started, I wanted to be in radio, wanted to be in television, wanted to do all those sorts of broadcasting-ish things, and did those things. But I wanted something more. I wanted to be able to do something meaningful, and being called to Focus on the Family back in 2000 and doing what I've done, it's just been an amazing journey to see how God has taken the gifts and the abilities and college degrees and experiences and woven those all together. And He do that with every single kiddo, every single child, and He wants to do that with our families. You know, our families, each of our families have a mission. They have something special that God can call them to do too. And so that's really the preface of that. With the club, we have the ability, we put the whole enchilada online, so 800 plus episodes on there. They can have fun, but much more than just listening to a bunch of episodes and listening to their favorites. It's learning how to put their faith into action and how to own their faith, so that they're strong and they will stand the test of time.
I love that, and I we're talking about social media and tablets and how kids bring their cell phones into church. And I just want a disclaimer here. When we show the video, it's going to show me getting on my iPhone while you were talking, but it's because something, I wasn't just surfing. There was something I got some stats this weekend that kind of affirm what you were saying. It basically, George Barnes sent this to me. Right now, tweens spend 6 hours a day absorbing media, 40 to 45 hours a week. And then here's this. It gets closer to 9 hours among teens with an average of 50 to 55 hours a week.
That's right.
And what struck me as you were talking was not only those two facts, but this fact, that a majority of tweens in America now own their own tablet or laptop. And that's why it's so important for programs like the club that you guys are doing to go to where the kids are. They're no longer watching just television with a bunch of people. It's individualized, and so I think it's great that you're reaching them like that.
And I think it's also a great way. You know, I had one family member, a mom, write me the other day, and she said, Odyssey is the only thing we don't limit. Well, okay. That's a family choice too. What I would say for a family is that it's super important, especially in the teen years when they're bombarded with messages, when they're bombarded with musical lyrics, for them to understand how to decipher and filter and discern wise media. And so I always teach my kiddos at church in Philippians. It talks about whatever's true, whatever's pure, think about these things. There's a whole list of things. And so if you take the media that you're consuming and kind of line it up with that, how does it filter out? Does it work? and so I believe in boundaries for my kids, and even my personal kids. My son, he loves YouTube, and he will spend all time there. And you have to say, okay, enough's enough. Go read a book, and or go jump on the trampoline, or go ride your bike, or go do something. And but at the same time, I feel like we're called as pastors, church leaders, as parents, as folks that are trying to guard our kids. We're called to provide good quality media for them, and provide means in which they can consume the gospel in a different way. And whether that's using their iPhone to read the Bible, I will say in our youth group, we have teens that will read their Bible on their iPhone, and that's okay. They're reading their Bible. But we also want to teach them the skill set to actually get into the physical Bible and look up a book and look up verses and do that sort of thing. And then also, as far as media is concerned, I think it's important to also have time to interact with God. Kind of cool is that it's a global community, and all of the comments are pre-moderated by our focus staff here in Colorado before they're ever posted. But it's cool for kiddos to be able to talk to each other, be able to say, I'm going to pray for you about that, and be able to interact and just have friends. So there's positives and there's not so positives about media, and you've got to strike that balance as a family, and it is hard. Hard to know when the right technology to introduce, what platforms to introduce at what time, and then how to keep them safe. And I think it's just majorly having conversations with them, but it can be tools for it can be some tools to protect kids too.
There's quite a few of those platforms now that are built to filter out. I know I think Disney came out with one called Circle that I've heard really good things about, that not only block questionable things, but they also limit time. Like you were saying, how important it is for kids to spend time outside. And there was so much time in front of a screen. This hardware actually, I believe it recognizes IP addresses, and it knows how much time you're actually online, and then just shuts you down after. And also gives the mom the ability to shut it down for mealtime, so that you can't, which is great.
Well, and you know what? There's simple things like that. I've had, first of all, we have friends here at Focus on the Family, Net Nanny and Force Field, that we have come to love and just appreciate the software and the technology that they have available to them. And there's simple things just as a parent, just creating boundaries, and it's hard. It is so hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to reset those with them. For my kids, I started with my daughter and with my son now, but with my daughter, I started a social media contract with her, and it was basically what you can use, when you can use it, and set out all those boundaries and all those things. And then over the course of time, we've changed that.
Right.
When she turned 18, I changed it. Instead of a social media contract, I changed it to a launch plan. And I said, hey, you're an adult now. We want to make sure that you're launching well.
That's great.
These are the things we still think you need to do in order to maintain your purity as far as what's going into and your eyes and what's going on, And so, and even with our son, we've had those discussions, but it's a little bit different for him. And that's the other thing I would just say to parents. Not every child is the same. There's some kids that can handle some things, and some kids that should not be handling other things. Yeah, and you have to. Yeah. And that's the reason why kids don't come with instruction manuals, right? I mean, the only thing you have is really the Bible to look at and to handle. One quick thing that I had a friend recently, one of her kids ended up at a friend's house and just thought it was going to be a fun night, and her son had to call home and say, can you pick me up, because there's some uncomfortable stuff here. Okay, so that kiddo called the dad, and of course he came. But one of the tips that a dad recently had that I saw online, and she mentioned online, which I thought was awesome, was to have your child, if they're in an uncomfortable situation, to text an X to you, and then you can pick up the phone and call your child and say, hey, you know what, something's just happened at home and we really need you home. I'm going to come and get you in just a few minutes. That way it's not the kid
reporting or anything.
It's making the parent kind of the bad guy, that something's at home, something's going on, we have to get you home kind of thing. But then it discreetly gets the kid out of a certain situation, whatever that may be. So I thought that was a good tip too. And I think the whole realm, what we've tried to do here at Focus on the Family is even utilize plugged in movies and plugged in movie reviews. We have book reviews, game reviews, tons of them, hundreds of them are online at Plugged In, and the guys, they go and watch those in order to provide information to parents to know what's going on. So that's another good resource if you know that your kids are fascinated with a new series or fascinated with the latest album or movie coming out. You can always check and make sure that that's what pitfalls may be there. I mean, something as simple as my husband and I and my son, we recently went to go see a Marvel movie. My husband loves Marvel and has kind of given that love to my son, but it's important to know what's going to be in a movie or what's going to be in a particular piece of work before you dive in, and then have those important conversations. If you do choose to go see those things, have the important conversations afterwards, so that those conversations and that openness is there about what's really good about that movie and what may not be so good from a Christian point of view.
I love what you're saying there, because you're not just saying just shield them from everything, but you're saying, I mean, there's some things that you should definitely shield them from, but in some cases it might be a really good conversation starter. And so utilize some of these media opportunities as a great conversation starter to actually have a connection and to explore these things with our kids. Exactly. And that's also, recently I think there was a little bit of a fad with 13 Reasons Why, for example. And Focus on the Family created a PDF download that you can get at focusonthefamily.com that just kind of walks a parent through that series, so that they don't necessarily have to watch it, but they're familiar with what's going on, but then giving them kind of that God's view of those situations and those different areas, so that there can be real conversations about that in the home. And so all those types of resources, there's plenty of them. And I think I would just encourage families and moms like me. I know you're so busy, and I know that it's so crazy. And yes, there are rabbits in the kitchen sink because the dishes pile up. They do. There has to be rabbits in those things, but you got to take time to just fill yourself with a little bit of knowledge, and also make that time with your kiddo to be able to talk through those things, because it leads to greater results down the road, to have that open communication, that open conversation, and to be knowledgeable about what's going on around you. Such a good reminder.
Yeah. Christi, I couldn't help but think, I was looking at the focusonthefamily.com website as you were talking a little bit, and, I know Focus on the Family is famous for reaching kids and really providing for parents good resources, but I can't help but see how much there's been an expansion in your support of parents, especially the parent who's in the middle of some kind of transition or a crisis.
Yeah.
And, there's divorce care, there's stuff for depression, addictions, people dealing with loss and tragedies and abusive relationships. I mean, there's a significant depth and breadth to what you guys do as a ministry for the parent of kids. And I know that the statistics are often sort of overwhelming, And a parent may be listening to this podcast today, and they're thinking, that's great that you've got this stuff for my kids.
Right.
Like, it's awesome that Adventures in Odyssey will really engage my 9-year-old, but I'm trying to figure out how, I'm going to stay married. So I just want to encourage you, any listener, any parent, husband or wife, even the solo parent, the single parent, and that could be from a divorce or from being widowed. There are people who are just needing reassurance, encouragement, to just get that nudge, if you will, of hope in the right direction. And so I just want to, as we're closing our time, I just want to make sure that all of our listeners know Focus on the Family is amazing, and Adventures in Odyssey is as good as it gets for this age group. But there is a lot more that you guys are doing to really reach out to families.
And I would say to that end, there's a couple of ways that you can stay connected with us and get that hope and encouragement. First of all, through our daily broadcasts, we've had folks that it was actually a woman who was ready to go to the lawyer to get divorce papers when she turned on the radio and just so happened to come upon Focus on the Family. We know those are God appointments. And after listening to that, she decided not to go through with that, and then that couple sought counseling. There's been other stories where a woman was about to, she wanted to end her life completely. She was done, and came upon Focus on the Family broadcast that had a guest on that was talking about suicide and depression, and reached out to us, found out that guest was going to be in her hometown in the next few weeks. And when that guest was there in her hometown, she was able to minister to that woman and give her hope that her life could go on. So the daily broadcast is one of those ways. Also the books and resources that come out. When we do resources, it's not meant, those are resources meant to help families thrive, to help to help marriages, to help parents in their need, and also to entertain and educate as we need to. So those are things. And then finally, I would just say our counseling line again is 1-800 the letter A family. You can call. You can ask for resources. You can. We pray with you. There's counselors that are available to you to talk if needed. And I will tell you personally, my heart's been broken just because I got a text just the other day from my husband's best friend, and they said, and he said in the text, and he was texting Scott and I, my husband and I, and he said our divorce is going to be final on Friday, and that's heartbreaking because we have been trying to help and be there and be a resource for them for a number of months now, and sometimes it isn't the happy ending that you would want it to be. And so we want to be there for families, and Focus on the Family is hopefully with God's grace going to continue to do that for many years to come.
Amen. I can say amen to that. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Christi, we are out of time today, and we are grateful that you took the time to share with our audience just a little bit about the amazing resources and options that are available for today's family in Colorado Springs at Focus on the Family. So thank you for joining us. May God richly bless you. Well, Robert, we just finished a really in-depth review of kind of all that Focus on the Family offers. I know it's kind of dropped off the radar for a lot of families in the last decade or two, but it's still alive and kicking.
It is. There's a lot going on there, and I know that the heart of what they're doing as an organization really is about the family, and it started there, and I didn't really follow it through the mid-years, but I know that there's just a revitalized interest in helping families thrive. And so I think she did a good job of articulating all the different programs they've got, and also gave us a little glimpse into the fact that the people that running this, or the people behind everything, are real people.
Right.
And, like she said, have messy lives from time to time, and as we all do. So I thought this was great. I enjoyed hearing her perspective, and I enjoyed just seeing the passion that they have for families and creating resources and connecting with families.
Yeah, I just want to sort of kick it back a little bit about as we watch our culture kind of adapt, transition, leaving a biblical worldview and embracing sort of this humanistic relativism. We call it the post-Christian world, right? The reality that more people are skeptical of the Bible and the nature of Jesus Christ than are not.
Right.
So we're suddenly now a minority, and I think resources and places like Focus on the Family become more important as we get further from our roots as a nation. And so I would encourage people that are listening, we're really fans of this, not just because of one thing they do, but for what they stand for.
Absolutely.
In general. And I've seen a lot of, I know we work with ministries a lot through the Tween Gospel Alliance, and some of them are young and new and innovative, and some are kind of older and more established. And the challenge that we see is that older ministries have trouble adapting sometimes to the new technologies, the new culture shifts that are around them. And one thing I can say for sure, Focus on the Family appears to be very agile. They're responding very attentively to the culture. If you look at that club for Adventures in Odyssey, that started out as just a radio, like cassette radio stuff.
Yep.
And if you look at it today, it has podcasts, it has video links, it has study guides, it has interactive avatars. Like you can pick and be one of the characters within Odyssey as you join the club. It's
right.
They've done a really great job.
They've paid attention to making something relevant without diluting their purpose.
Yeah, and that's such a fine line. I know we've been doing I Shine Now for almost a decade, and think about how much we've had to adapt.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
When we started out, it was, we had never done a television series. We didn't know what we were doing. We had a website that, was pretty much one page.
Yeah.
We had no idea what social media was. We had no idea, how to engage our audience other than this one factor. And over 9-10 years, we've had to adapt probably every year.
Probably, and I think that's a really good reminder to families that in parenting, to constantly measure ourselves and adapt as times go. Because not only is every kid different, but every kid in every stage of life is going to be different. And so we need to constantly, I think there are so many ways that I believe I'm more connected and a better parent than I was parented. But we're not competing. We're competing amongst so many other voices that we never had to deal with. Our kids are having to listen through all these things. So I think being able to adapt is a good thing to do as a parent, as well as obviously as ministries, but it's a good reminder for us as parents.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that Christi was able to kind of zoom in a little bit and go, okay, I'm a mom too. Yes, I run this big ministry department within Focus on the Family, but I'm also on the ground, sort of in the kitchen, if you will. And she made this comment about creating social media contracts with her daughter. And I thought, man, what a great idea. I was recently at a friend's house in Pennsylvania, and they have 3 kids in college and high school, and they collect their kids' smartphones when they go to bed.
Yeah.
Like at 10 o'clock or whatever, mom and dad get those.
I think that's a great
put
practice.
them in a basket and take it into their bedroom. And I'm like, man, that's a great idea. That's thinking.
It is thinking. And I've had that conversation with my kids, and it's well, how am I going to wake up? And every family is different. But yes, the point is we need to be intentional about what we're doing with our kids and not just leave it to chance, and not just think that what worked when we were kids or what worked even 5 years ago or a year ago is necessarily going to work today.
Yeah, I just found that encouraging. I'm about to enter into being a grandparent, so that's coming for me very shortly, and I'm going to watch my kids now parent kids.
freaky.
It's going to be fascinating, I think. And so if you think about that, Focus on the Family's 40 years old. That's a generation biblically. And so now some of the kids that were raised by Focus on the Family are now helping to run it. Right. And so for me, that's a real evidence that God is in something when it reproduces itself. And so I just encourage parents, if you haven't spent any time on their website lately, if your marriage is in trouble, if you need help with raising kids, if you just need resources or a review for a movie, they have a lot of stuff
they do
on that website. And so please check it out, and we would encourage you to do that. Now, before we totally close off, before we finish this podcast, I worked very hard today, Robert.
Really?
Yeah, I had to wrestle Winston a little bit harder.
He was feisty today.
Yeah, I had to give him like 3 pieces of cheese to get some wisdom.
He didn't want to give up wisdom.
No, I think he's getting used to this now.
It's the celebrity.
Yeah, I think he's getting a little attitude. And so after a little bit of sort of, sweet talk, and I did tell him he was handsome today and that his fur was looking extra shiny. And then he finally told me
of course, for those just listening for the first time, perhaps, we're talking about Winston LaCroix Beeson, who is my dog, but our mascot here.
And he's
quite a piece of work.
He's a Chorky.
He is. Very good.
Yeah, he's a Chorky. I think he kind of looks like a squirrel with a lion's mane. And I mean that in a positive way if Winston's listening. Yeah.
I'm sure he is.
So Winston whispered to me just a couple of very wise sayings, some facts, and I know our listeners will be fascinated. They may even drive right off the road.
It's not good.
I mean, well, this is intense stuff. So if you're seated, make sure your seatbelt is on. Here's the first one. There are 3 today. This is not just a single thing. I gave him 3 pieces of cheese. I got 3 facts.
Okay.
All right. Number 1, men are 6 times more likely to be struck by lightning than women.
Really?
That's a fact. Yeah. Winston told me. Number 2, Coca-Cola, the drink, Coca-Cola, would be green if it wasn't colored.
Really?
Now that's
a little sick.
That could be like a Dr. Seuss drink, That's pretty cool. And then the third one, and this is important for you and I, Robert.
Okay.
I think this is very important for any husbands out there in their middle ages. You cannot snore and dream at the same time.
I beg to differ.
No, it's here. It's on my resource kit here.
Okay, it's from a dog.
Well, Winston is not just a dog.
I realize that. I realize
he is very wise
and can apparently talk, but only to you.
Well, I am the dog whisperer.
Okay.
Yeah. So with that, I just want to leave those important details with every one of our parents who are listening and enjoying the Brilliantly Brave podcast. We have a good time with this. We hope you do too. Please visit us on social media. Stop by Apple, subscribe to our podcast, and give us a positive review if you would.
It's great. And we'll see you here next week.
Next week, we have guests flying in all the way from New Zealand. It's Tim and Amy Clary. They're the family behind the Ministry of Aetherlight, an online software ministry game, and they are a delightful addition to the Brilliantly Brave family. We hope you can definitely download or tune in next week right here at Brilliantly Brave Parenting.
Parents, remember, even if you may not feel brilliant or brave, you are. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, and love, and self-control. And I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed. I am convinced that he is able to guard until that day what has been entrusted to me. 2 Timothy 1:7 and 13. This podcast is a service of iShine Ministries and the Tween Gospel Alliance. All rights reserved. Donations to Brilliantly Brave are tax-deductible at iShineLive.com. Review and subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or on our webpage. And read our blog and connect with us at WordPress@BrilliantlyBrave.com. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Brilliantly Brave.
iShine is a faith-based ministry and media company that looks and feels a lot like a Christian version of Disney. iShine is more than entertainment. We're the producer of the largest Christian tween TV series in the world, a nationally syndicated radio show, a Nashville-based record label, host to multiple live tours and summer festivals, an interactive website and social media, and a provider of printed and digital devotionals, preteen Bibles, and church curriculums. But more than anything, we're a trusted Christian resource for parents and pastors. You can turn to us for all things tween. Check us out at ishinelive.com.
Like a light, we're made to shine.
Hey parents and grandparents, this is Zach Fay, creator of Light Gliders, a digital game world of Christian faith and fun. The critical years to impact kids for Christ are before the age of 13, and kids are spending more time digitally connected than ever before. Light Gliders was created to redeem this time and to encourage faith, values, and meaningful conversations among the kids you care about. Visit us today at lightgliders.com or download the Light Gliders app.